Good morning, everybody. Lori Frick, CPS Director. Good to see you. As always, I like to scroll through and see faces. So if you are not driving, please make sure your camera is on and you are fully participating. Really excited about this topic today. I hope that you guys are finding it to be helpful. I think it's going to be a really great presentation. I feel like it's been a while since we've had Back to Basics, I think because we had it a little bit early in October, but glad to see you guys. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Jason, and Julie and Ashley, but I just want to remind you again, I just saw your message, Amy. Cameras on, if you can safely do so, and if they're working appropriately. Ask questions really at the end by raising your hand and having your camera on to ask those questions. It's way too much to manage in a chat during these Back to Basics. So just a quick reminder of that. Happy to see you all, and thank you, Jason, Julie, and Ashley for taking on this presentation today.
Thank you, Lori. Welcome and thank you all for being here. Today's Back to Basics is focused on strengthening our practice around family finding, specifically how we use genuine connection and intentional conversation to identify, engage, and support the people who matter most to the children and families we serve. I'm Ashley McLaughlin, Social Worker 6 with the Service Help Desk, and I'm joined today by Jason Kilby, the Service Area Manager in the Northern Service Area, and Julie Clark-Albrecht, the Kinship and Parent Partner Program Manager. We each bring different perspectives, but a shared belief that family connections are essential in achieving safety, permanency, and well-being. Today's purpose is to recenter family finding as an ongoing practice, not a one-time task. We want to show how everyday conversations, whether with a child, parent, or family member, can open doors to natural supports. We will share strategies to build trust and curiosity into our work, even during crisis and conflict situations, and we'll model what good connection sounds like so staff feel equipped to apply it immediately. Every child deserves to know who loves me, where do I belong, and who shows up for me. Family finding helps answer those questions with real people, real stories, and real relationships. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason to lay the foundation.
Thanks, Ashley. Before we dive into tools and strategies, we need to really ground ourselves in why family finding matters and how it fits into our everyday practice. Laying the foundation means understanding our values, connection, curiosity, dignity, and our partnership with families. And we want to look at the mindset shift, from checking a box to building a network. We have a ton of tasks that we have to do every day, and this is a really important one. And that shift will change the outcomes of what we see for children. Brave conversations help workers build genuine relationships with families. And the first context on this subject can really set the tone for engagement with families by taking the time to get to know who are the people within their circles that build the trust. And by creating a safe and honest space, we can invite openness, even when emotions run high. And sometimes it's necessary just to acknowledge that this is a difficult conversation, but really a very important conversation. Ask for help from the family to gain this information, and this is a good time to not be uncomfortable with silence. Leaning into uncomfortable topics often reveals important connections or supports that might otherwise remain unknown. When families are struggling, they tend to isolate, and what we want to do is break that isolation by bringing the people that they know and trust into that circle to help them. And these conversations keep the focus where it belongs, on the child's need for lasting family and stability, rather than on what might be an uncomfortable or fearful conversation. Even with the best of intentions, we go out there, we're like, I'm going to have a great conversation. But some things can make those conversations difficult when we sit down to have them. Our own personal discomfort, everything we've experienced up to this point in our lives, influences how we see family connections, our own personal relationships with our family, with our extended family and friends. And so recognizing what your experiences have been is important, a very important first step in making sure that you're going to be comfortable with having the conversations you need to have. The other thing that can really influence our time and our ability to have these conversations are time pressures. We are all very, very busy. And when you're out in the field and you're having those conversations with family, be it just that first initial visit, your case management contact or removal, there's a lot of time pressures that can make it feel like it's difficult to find the time to have that silence, to pull out those conversations, to really sit and have a meaningful conversation. So I just encourage you to recognize that and to be aware of that as you think about the words that you use in those conversations. Uncertainty around language, we're always worried about, and myself included, when we're meeting with a family, having a difficult conversation, that we're going to say the wrong thing. Because things we say can inadvertently trigger people, and then it feels like, gosh, I said the wrong thing. So think about in advance, maybe some of the words you can use, and we're going to have some of that later on to help with that. But just be aware that might be something influencing your willingness to have that conversation. And then finally, family resistance. People don't think about yourself. Like if you're having a real intimate family problem with yourself, with your kids, you really don't want to share that with everybody. So helping families understand why we want the information, what we're going to do with it, and how we're going to help, and acknowledging some of that, why families may be hesitant, is an important first step in having that conversation. So to move us along, take a second and think to yourself about the first word that comes to mind when you think family finding. You don't have to put it in chat yet, just hold on to it. If just a few of you do want to put that in chat, feel free, but no pressure. There's a lot of people here, so we don't need to blow up the chat for Ashley. So Ashley's going to read out a few. She said I could do it, but I'm going to let her do it. Ashley's going to read out a few as they come in.
All right, thank you, Jason. So it looks like security, that is a great one. I mean, security really talks about connection, feeling safe. Oh, good, you guys are going fast. I don't know if I can keep up with you. Relationships, connection is the core of this work. So I think kids need people who know them, who see them, who stick with them. So that is spot on. Resources, I love that. We need resources to help these families keep those connections and those positive relationships and supports together. Familiar, they're going so fast. Support, absolutely. This work builds a safety net that's going to last longer than our involvement, which is what we really, really want. We want these people to be able to use their supports long after we're gone. So I can't read all of these and talk about all of these, but I so appreciate your willingness to put these in the chat, but you guys are getting absolutely where we want to go. It really is important to think that this is hard work, but it's necessary work to support and connect children to their families. So with that, Julie is going to talk a little bit more about the why. You guys have already started that conversation for us, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, so thanks to everybody who shared. I think this really helps set the tone and the foundation, as Ashley said, to talk about why there's so much meaning behind this family finding work, why it matters, why it's an important investment of our time, and how it changes outcomes for kids in ways that nothing else can, that we do when we work with kids and families. So we really want to talk about why family finding is one of the most critical factors in the case, and looking at the time. So every day a child spends without meaningful connections is a day we can't get back. So we really want to think early on in the case, engaging with relatives and supports, and that can help lead to quicker stability, a stronger sense of identity for the kids, and create lasting relationships. So if you can think about on your caseload, one child whose story might look different if family connections had been explored earlier. So just give a second to think about that one child on your caseload might look different if those family connections had been explored sooner. It really helps us to reflect on that because it gives a sense of urgency in family finding. So not just about the policy or the process, but really thinking about, in human terms, why those family connections are so important, and the impacts of when we haven't maybe explored all the avenues and taken the time that was needed early on to make sure that we've done everything we could to identify those connections. Our own experiences and beliefs can also have a powerful influence on our practice. So sometimes in ways that we don't immediately recognize. And that sense of urgency we bring to family finding can be shaped by our internal lenses. So how we define stability, what we perceive as safety, or even when we think about relationships that we instinctively value more. So sometimes when we carry those assumptions about who's most appropriate or who's the most capable, we might unconsciously dismiss relatives too quickly. And this can happen when a family has maybe a history of conflict, maybe they're facing poverty, or they just may live differently than what we might consider typical or comfortable. So when we narrow that definition of family, we may then also inadvertently limit the search and disregard those important connections to the child. It's also important to remember that not all families look the same. So when we think of family, we might, go right to parents, siblings, grandparents, but then we may end up overlooking the broader network of those people who may love and support the child. Could be aunts, cousins, godparents, or even long-term family friends. So by broadening that lens and developing self-awareness by looking at our biases, we can help ensure that decisions are guided by the child's needs, which helps us allow and widen the definition of family and pursue every possible connection that could help change a child's life. Now let's talk about the how. How can we work through challenges and be successful in family finding and engagement efforts? So one of the first things we want to think about is letting families lead. So this can be one of the most powerful ways to build trust and strengthen outcomes in family finding. We know that families should be viewed as partners and decision makers and not just sources of information. So when the family is actively involved in shaping their plans, they feel more likely to be respected and valued. And that sense of ownership can help translate into stronger follow through, which also can be greater commitment to the work that they can do and the ways in which they can help identify those important connections for the child's well-being. There will always be times when we're limited by policy or safety concerns and then can't fully honor the family's wishes. But whenever we can, allowing the family's voice to help guide decisions will help repair trust, and especially in systems that may have historically silenced or excluded them. This can also help ensure that the family's choices reflect their culture, their values, and when we've identified existing support networks, we're utilizing those networks rather than imposing our outside definition of what's best. So when families lead, kids are more likely to remain connected with their kin, their community, and their identity, which builds that strong foundation for stability and belonging that permanency is meant to provide. When we shift the language we use in family finding, it also helps change the entire tone and outcome of our conversations. So when you're gathering information with the family, think beyond placement. So think about the other ways that people who are identified can be a support. That might look like transportation to family interactions, those who are willing to supervise visits, being able to attend a family finding meeting, sharing family photos, or sharing information or updates about how extended family members are doing, or even going with the parent to recovery meetings. So there are lots of ways that we can look beyond simply a placement opportunity or placement option, but also ways that those who are identified can be a support to the family. So the worker being able to kind of think broadly about that ways the identified family members and other important connections can provide support is really important. And it helps broaden our definition of what help looks like so that it feels more accessible and realistic for families. And also helps uncover a wider circle of people that can help the family and contribute to safety, connections, and stability, even if they're not caregiving. We also know that every young person deserves a strong network of people who help to nurture and guide them and support their growth. And we know that research shows that youth with lasting supportive connections experience more positive outcomes. So our role is to help them discover and build those relationships And we will show you the Discovering Connections tool, which can help provide a menu of conversation starters for youth in out-of-home care to help them identify those important connections in their lives. We're also going to show you the resource for locating supports and connections tool, which can help you provide a guide to help find relatives and use it to help start conversations. We also want to emphasize that it's important to engage out-of-state families early. We don't want to delay exploration until the ICPC process is necessary. So that early outreach can allow time to build relationships, gather the necessary information, and make informed decisions before formal paperwork begins. This can help avoid both rushing and unnecessary delays. So you can see here on your screen, this is a portion of the Discovering Connections tool. We will send this and the other tool we're going to share with you out with today's recording. But the purpose of this is to really provide a framework for helping youth identify important and meaningful relationships. It also emphasizes the importance of strong social networks for healthy youth development. The tool helps guide conversations so that youth feel that they have some ownership in choosing which connections that they want to record on the tool, can help guide the conversation to be safe and sensitive, so utilizing a trauma-informed approach, and also recognizes the strengths and value of the informal supports in a youth's life. So using the tool, that gives you some guidance on making sure you're choosing a comfortable setting for those conversations, being transparent and open about the purpose of why you're using the tool to guide some questions and gather some information. And the questions are there as a guide. You can adapt them for a more natural conversation with the youth, but making sure that the things that you're recording, that you have consent from the youth to be able to write down, letting them know what the next steps are, what you'll do with the information, but without overpromising anything. And also, if they're struggling with identifying connections, making sure to acknowledge the resilience, that they have, and utilizing that to help support them to either reconnect with those important connections or think about how they can establish new connections. The questions are centered on things like looking at past holidays and activities. So who were the important people in their lives that they celebrated with? Also looking at who they reach out to for advice or help, or who were the helpers when they provided care and safety to them during difficult times. And also, who do they maintain contact with, and who would they prefer to live with? The next tool that we want to talk with you about is the resources for locating supports and connections tool. And this is really just a guide to helping you identify and engage with the family, and they're identifying the natural supports for kids and families. So it can outline who key contacts are that you would want to reach out to, parents, relatives, informal supports, and professional partners, as well as listing state and federal systems to access that can provide valuable information. So also included in the guide are some public search tools, and also an additional tool called the Family Finding Project. This is available to help locate potential connections by submitting information, and we'll show you a quick snapshot of that. The link is on the document, so you can get to it from there. And this is an example of what that looks like. So you can provide any information that you have about the family member or identified connection that you're trying to contact. It may not produce all of the information that you are trying to obtain, but you will get a response with any information found within 15 business days after receipt of the referral. You obviously make the referral by submitting all the information that you can and submitting the link. It's a secure link and does not require release of information. So any information provided by submitting the form will remain protected and confidential. And like we said, we'll send out the two Discovering Connections tool and supporting resources document with this link on it. So you'll have that following today's recording. And next, Ashley's going to talk to us about validating the family's concerns around family finding efforts.
Thanks, Julie. So when a family pulls back or seems resistant, there's almost always something that they're protecting. Most families have had moments in their life where they felt judged or talked over. So it makes sense that they might be worried about being blamed or about who will see their information or about losing control once CPS is part of the picture. Instead of trying to convince them otherwise right away, we need to start by acknowledging what they're feeling. Something as simple as, I can understand why that would feel uncomfortable. I'd probably feel that way too if I wasn't sure what would happen next. This kind of validation isn't agreeing with every detail. It's simply saying, your feelings make sense and I hear you. When a family feels heard, the tone shifts. The conversation gets easier. They don't have to fight for space. We've already made room for them. From here, we can start talking about what safety and support could look like with them, not at them. Our goal in this phase is to build enough trust for the family to stay in the conversation and feel safe enough to collaborate. Next slide, please. Thank you. So if the first step is acknowledging the fear and making space for it, the next step is helping the family understand what's actually happening with their information. Because a lot of that fear comes from not knowing who knows what. I know I'd feel very uncomfortable not knowing who is going to get access to my information. So when confidentiality comes up, this is one of those moments where clarity reduces anxiety. Families want to know who will know their information and why, and that's a fair question. It's important we slow down and explain it in plain language. Something as simple as, I only share information with people who are involved in making sure your kids are safe and supported, and then we share the least amount of information needed to make that happen. Also, go a step further, let them know that they will sign a release for this and that their voice matters. We'll talk through who feels safe and who doesn't. We'll make those decisions together as much as possible is another way of phrasing it to them. What we're doing here is showing the family that they are still part of the steering wheel. We are not making decisions in a closed room without them. We're saying you get to have a say and we'll move at a pace that feels respectful as long as we are able. When people understand why information is shared and how they get to stay part of the conversation, the fear of losing control starts to ease. And that's what makes the partnership more real, more grounded, and more possible. Once we've validated the concern and clarified confidentiality, now we can actually start building connection. And connection is what opens the door to problem solving together. This is where our everyday engagement skills really matter. When trust feels shaky, open-ended questions help us learn who and what matters to this family. These aren't interrogation questions, they're curiosity questions. So we might ask, who shows up when things are hard? Or who's been helpful before? Or who would be excited to hear how your child is doing right now? These questions invite the family to remember their support system, even if that support has been inconsistent or complicated recently. It helps us see the strengths and relationships that already exist. But it's not just about the questions. It's how we show up in the conversation. We need to normalize hesitation. We can say it makes sense to be careful with this. We have to notice and name these strengths early, even at something as small as telling them that you can tell they really care about staying connected to their child. And also we need to offer choices whenever possible, so the family still feels that sense of direction and control. But most importantly, we have to keep the child at the center. But by reminding everyone that we're working toward the same thing, the child being safe and supported in relationships that matter. Connection builds trust. Trust opens options, and that's where the movement happens. Once we've opened the door to connection, we don't have to do everything at once. We can start small. Small steps feel safer for the family and is easier for us. And safety is what keeps people in conversation. When we're asking families to reconnect with someone, especially in a situation that already feels stressful, going big can feel overwhelming. So instead of pushing for a full family meeting or a whole list of contacts, slow the pace and start with one small step. These questions can help us do that. Who would you feel most comfortable reaching out to first? If we made just one phone call together, who should it be to? Or who feels safest to begin this with? These questions communicate a few important things. Number one, the family gets to have a say. They're not being pushed into something they're not ready for. Number two, we're in this with them. We can literally sit beside them and make that first phone call together and kind of talk them through it. And number three, we're honoring their emotional safety, not just their physical safety. And parents need to feel that just as much as children. And sometimes the first step isn't outreach at all. Sometimes that first step is simply them naming someone who feels supportive or who could be supportive, even if we can't contact them today because they don't have contact information. That's still progress. That still builds capacity. Starting small is not doing less. It's building trust in a way that's actually sustainable. So when we put all of this together, family engagement becomes less about checking steps off a list and more about how we show up in the relationship. When we stay curious, when we communicate clearly, and when we take time to understand where a family is coming from, we create conditions where trust can grow. It's easy to get caught up in requirements, deadlines, and pressure to move things forward fast. I get it. We have deadlines. We have requirements. But if we can slow down just enough to really see the family, every conversation we have with them becomes an opportunity to continue to build connection, especially the hard conversations. And we remind ourselves, engagement isn't a single moment. It isn't one meeting or one phone call. It's a process. It builds over time through tone, consistency, and how we respond when things get tense. When families feel respected and included, they are more able to collaborate, more open to support, and more connected to the people who will walk along beside them, not just during involvement, but beyond it. And that is the heart of this work. So remember, family engagement isn't one and done. It's built over time through consistency, patience, and how we show up in every conversation that follows. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jason to talk about those deadlines and requirements a little bit.
Thanks. So under federal and state requirements, relative notifications must occur within 30 days of a child's removal from the home. But as we've talked about, family finding is a continuing process, not just a one-time event. As we engage families, ask the questions, build trust, new names often emerge, extended kin, community members, supports who we didn't know from the beginning. When new connections are identified, the same rules apply. Send relative notices within 30 days of learning about them. And this ensures that those potential supports and caregivers have the opportunity to become involved early and meaningful in the child's plan. Timeliness matters, but so does persistence. Family finding is ongoing, and new doors may be opened at any time. Don't be afraid to follow up with a phone call. The requirement to send a relative notification is the minimum required. And this is a situation where, if at all possible, we'd like to exceed the expectation. There's a lot of instances where just that follow-up phone call can make all the difference between no answer and someone that maybe really will show up to support the family. So please, if possible, do that. I want to talk a little bit about foster families in engaging foster families in the family finding effort. Our foster parents are such an important part of the child support network, and it's helpful to involve them in the family finding conversations early. They see the kiddo every day, and they can share a lot of insight into what the kiddo needs, the child needs to feel secure. When we explain that family finding is about exploring safe family options and long-term supports, not necessarily replacing their role, it helps them understand the broader goal of belonging. Foster families and foster parents can share observations about how the child reacts when family is mentioned, and those small details can guide the timing and pace of engagement. And foster families also hear the things that children might not share directly with their worker because they're situational. When they're doing an event or doing a thing, making a meal with a family or walking in a park, something triggers a memory. And those children will share those things with the foster parents. And we want to have access to that information to try to continue to build the support network for the child. So asking the foster family and building that trust with the foster family about what the child has said about relatives or friends can help us build a more complete connection map. Encourage them to notice patterns and repeated names that seem meaningful to children, even something small like a nickname or a place the child talks about or an event the child attended with somebody or something they remember that was positive. We want to set the stage for collaboration, not competition between foster and birth families. It's normal for foster families to feel protective or unsure, so clarifying everyone's role and the shared goal of stability can really help these introductions be smoother. And also doing some preparation with both sides before contact helps reduce tension and supports open communication. Over time, these relationships can and do evolve, and when foster and family members work together, it reinforces the child's sense of belonging and helps them feel stronger and more connected to their support system. Ashley, I think you're going to wrap us up.
I am. Thank you, Jason. So as we close, I want to bring us back to the core message. Family finding isn't a task, it is a practice, and it's most effective when it's grounded in connection and conversation. These key points are really the anchors we come back to in every case. First, we invite stories, not yes or no answers. When we ask questions that let people share experiences, we learn who matters to them, how they show love, and who's already been supportive. Stories tell us what relationships actually look like, not just who's on paper. Second, we focus on connections, not placements. We don't start by asking, can this person take the child? We start with, who has been important to your family? Support can look like phone calls, family interactions, visits with family, cultural connections. It's not always about where the child lives. Third, we build comfort through choice when we can. Families may not get to choose when this work is happening, but they can choose who we reach out to first. That small piece of control helps lower fear and increase trust with CPS. And we keep relatives informed as much as possible. Even if someone can't be a placement, staying connected matters both for them and the children. And finally, again, family finding is not a one and done. It's a conversation we return to throughout the life of the case. Relationships shift, capacity changes, new people come forward. We here at CPS need to stay curious and keep asking questions. So we've covered a lot today. Oh, next slide, sorry. And the goal is not to walk out of here and change everything all at once. It's to take one small thing into tomorrow that shifts how we show up with families. So I want to end with just a quick reflection. Just take a second and think about, what will you do differently tomorrow because of what you heard today? Just one small thing, something small, specific, and doable. You can put your answer in the chat. It doesn't have to be polished, just whatever comes to mind. Let's see here. Ask foster parents for observation. That's great. I think that is something that when I was out in the field, I didn't think about until I had been doing it for a while. And so when Jason talked about bringing that in, I said we need to have that because it is a place that we miss sometimes. Be more intentional when listening. Absolutely. Oh gosh, now we're going, guys. Better active listening. Open-ended questions about family connections. Absolutely. That really shifts the tone when we aren't just asking yes or no, who can take this child. It really opens up to a bigger conversation. Oh gosh, you guys are amazing. All right, you keep going with that. I'm going to keep reading through those, but I do really want to thank you all for sharing those. I appreciate all the thoughtfulness, but we do want to make sure that we leave some time for questions. So if anybody has any questions, please unmute and raise your hand.
Ashley, while we're waiting for that, I wanted to make one comment. I really think that that key point of it's about looking for connections, not placement, changes the way we have the conversation with families.
Absolutely. Oh, Alex, I love that. Asking about Christmas and Thanksgiving. Who's your favorite aunt and uncle? That is a great way to get there without asking who can be placement, right? Jackie, more about their routines. You guys have some great ideas. I needed one of these when I was out in the field. Who comes to birthday parties? That's a great one.
Can't stress enough the importance of engaging family in all the things that we do with these kids, right? Whether it's You know, like they were talking about, whether it's a placement or really just having someone additionally for support, it's really important in what we do. So thank you guys again for your presentation. Very well done. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate all of you and the hard work that you're doing out there every day. And we won't see you before Christmas, so have a wonderful Thanksgiving, you guys.
Have a great holiday.